What's going on, YouTube family? It's your boy Justin here, and as always, in the kitchen, here to talk to you, drop a little fitness and nutrition knowledge on you. And today, again, we're going to continue with the 5 minutes and under video series. I think I've got under 5 minutes once, so we'll see if I can do it today. Today, we're not going to talk about peak week anymore. We're not going to talk about contest prep. Today, we're just going to talk about macros and when it's appropriate to adjust your macros based on how progress is going with you. A lot of people focus on macro. I mean, if it's your macros person or a flexible dieter, typically calories are king and macros are queen. Meaning, overall calories are what you shoot for, and then you distribute those calories by breaking them down into macros, which are fats, carbs, and proteins. And so your goal every day is to count using MyFitnessPal or like some counting calorie app to track everything you eat and make sure your values add up. But the misconception, so that's kind of the basic understanding of macro counting. But the misconception is when to adjust those values or when to manipulate them because your progress is stalled. Now, the problem with our society and our generation is we're impatient. And that could be a huge downfall for us because you will track your macros for a couple days or even for a week and you don't see a change, or you might see a gain, or just nothing really on the scale is moving. And so you think, oh crap, I need to drastically lower my calories or drastically switch up my carbs or whatever. And so you freak out, you drop your carbs, which drops your calories, and still nothing, or you're just getting too extreme too quickly. So today, real quick, I just wanted to go over when is it appropriate to adjust, how long you should wait, and just kind of how you should manipulate it. Okay, so really simply, for a standard diet, if you're not like carb cycling, if you're just trying to be in a calorie deficit or in even a calorie surplus, carbs are really the biggest manipulation that you change year round, right? So fats should always be moderate. My kind of intake on fats, they should be anywhere from 0.3 to 0.40 times your body weight at any given point in the year. Obviously, if you're 0.3, that means you're gonna have your carbs higher. If you're doing the 0.4 value, then more so you're gonna have your carbs lower because it means you're gonna have a higher fat percentage. Now, obviously, every person and everybody is kind of somewhat different, but there are some general trends, and that's kind of a good range for you to use just if you're trying to get started, or even, just for a basic prep, which is what I use. For protein, so when you're in a calorie surplus, meaning you are eating more calories, or you're intaking more calories than you're burning, so you're bulking or trying to add size, protein becomes a little less important because you're not worrying about muscle preservation because you're providing your body with enough molecules and enough energy essentially to build. And so protein, when you are in a calorie surplus, I always shoot for closer to about 1 gram per body weight, if not lower. I kind of fluctuate anywhere from 0.8 to about 1 gram, depending on the day and kind of what I'm lifting. If I'm doing like a leg movement or a back movement that requires more energy from me, I will have lower protein and raise my carbs to have a better, to be more fueled for my workout, if that makes sense. Or I'll even do that the night before or the day before to have if I'm doing it in the morning. Now carbs are the biggest manipulation, I would say, when it comes to dieting versus bulking. You need to have, I'm just gonna let you know this is not gonna be under 5 minutes, again, whatever. So carbs, you need to have them ideally as high as possible, right? Because carbs are what's your main energy source. It's gonna be the easiest source of energy for your body to utilize. And so why have carbs super low when they can be moderate, right? So my intake on that is always have your proteins and your fats adjusted first, and then use your remaining calories to fill your carbs. And you can always kind of fluctuate with that, but for me, example, I am 14 weeks out from my show, and I have not adjusted my carbs. I really haven't adjusted my macros this entire time, and my carbs are at 300 right now. And I started at 300, and I'm still at 300 and still steadily making progress. So carbs, when you're dieting, obviously they're gonna have to drop. Those are what's gonna be hit first when you're dieting. You don't wanna lower your protein If anything, you want to have it high. So when you're dieting, obviously your protein should be, I said when you're in a surplus, your protein should be probably 0.8 to 1 grams per body weight. When you're dieting, I always shoot for about 1 to 1.2. Anything over is really not needed. It's going to be harder on your kidneys, and it's just something it's not needed. I'd rather utilize the extra calories for carbs. So as long as you're hitting about 1 gram to 1.2 grams per body weight when you're dieting, you're going to be fine. It really then comes down to how quickly you're dieting down. You shouldn't be progressing any more than about 1 pound to maybe 1.5 pounds a week, depending on how much fat you have to lose when dieting. Otherwise, you are burning. You're wasting muscle. You're not just burning fat, because the body can only break down fat so quickly until it has to. If you're dieting so extreme, you're going to be wasting muscle, and then it's kind of like you're not doing things properly. Slow and steady always wins the race. Okay, so kind of going over what the values you should be, either if you're in a calorie surplus or a calorie deficit, and kind of how to adjust your carbs and where your fat should always the range your fat should always be. Protein where it should be if you're in a diet or if you're in a surplus. Carbs are always kind of the last thing you manipulate. If you're dropping your calories, if you're reducing your calories, and then you're going to hit your carbs first. Another small thing is when you're dieting or when you're bulking, calories are king, right? That's what I talked to you about at the beginning. Calories are king. And so depending on how quickly you want to diet or bulk up is how many calories you should be in surplus over your maintenance. So for example, for me, I think my maintenance would be around 2,900, okay? Or probably around 3,000. So if you want to have a steady bulk, try to increase by 300, per day. So be at like 32 or 33 if I was if I was doing it for myself. Now, if you're dieting, then I could just do the opposite, subtract 300 from maintenance. So maybe like 26 or 2,700 for me. And that's really where I'm at. I'm about 27, 28. Only because I've developed over time my metabolism to be running efficiently just by doing proper nutrition. And that's another great thing about a coach is they can not only get you physical results and how you look, but more so getting your metabolism properly running and firing, so dieting or bulking becomes easier in the long run opposed to being harder and more aggressive. But I'm going on a tangent. Anyways, so we are talking about calories, kind of where you should be, where you should set it. I want to talk to you another thing. Now, just kind of when to adjust your macros, right? When you need to drop your calories, when you need to add them, when you need to switch things up. People, like I said at the beginning, are impatient. If you are dieting and you have a set plan, right? If you have a set plan, you weigh yourself and you say, okay, I'm gonna do my macros, I'm gonna weigh myself in again in a week. That's great, that's fine. I would always recommend the scale being, useful to an extent, but always take measurements when you start any kind of program. Measure, your hips, your waist, your thighs, your arms, your shoulders, whatever, all the areas that are important to you that you want to track progress, because the scale is not always going to fluctuate and that does not always define progress. I have plenty of clients that don't change at all on the scale for 1 or 2 weeks, and we look and they're down 1 inch on their waist. And without those measurements, they would have looked at themselves and said, I have not made any progress. Especially since you see yourself every day, you're more subjective as opposed to being objective to the reality of your progress, right? So always do with the scale, but always do measurements as well. It's very important. Another thing, when you are dieting and you have those numbers, you can either weigh yourself once a week for a little bit and see if that's changing, but you could also do it daily. But make sure you do it at the exact same time every day if you do. So in the morning, maybe when you wake up. That way you don't harp on the number, but you can get you can average it over the 7 days. You can average what each number was. That way maybe that day you do your check-in, you might have ate later, you might have had more water, whatever, so it might not be a true weight, but if you average your loss, once again you're more accurate. But if you don't lose weight, in a week, don't change your macros. Don't change your macros for a while. I always have my clients wait at least 10 to 14 days, so at least 2 weeks on macros. So if they're on a plan, if I give them the macros, their plan, and they follow it, and that's another thing, you got to be consistent. You can't be like, oh, these macros are not working, but then go, stuff your face and go 800 calories over your macros every day. It's not going to work. So if you're consistent, if you can honestly say you've been consistent wait more than a week. Give yourself 2 weeks. Sometimes it takes your body to really get things going, guys. And like I said, the measurements can always be different than just the scale number. So give yourself at least 10 to 14 days on your macro plan, unless if you're losing like 5 pounds or gaining like 5 pounds. If you are, if it's been a week and you are up, you're supposed to be dieting, and you're up like 5 pounds, then you might need to rethink your macros. Same thing if you're dieting and you're down like 5 pounds, that's too aggressive. You might be like, oh cool, that's great, water weight, yeah, blah, blah, blah. No, take it slower, guys. Definitely trust me when I say this. I have people always message me saying, hey, actually last night, someone messaged me saying, hey, I lost 6 pounds for eating healthy and clean foods this week and doing all this stuff. Is that right? I'm like, no, it's not. Don't do that. Eat properly, eat enough to where you're losing anywhere from like a 1 to 1.5, maybe 2 pounds per week at most. Do it slowly, preserve your metabolism, guys. If you can have your metabolism running efficiently, instead of doing this drastic cut, it's going to be way better for you in the long run, I promise. And it's going to allow you to eat more, it's going to affect your mood, it's going to just overall create less of an energy gap between the calories you're consuming and your metabolism, how quickly it's running. Okay, so definitely doubled the time plus some. But I hope that helped. I hope it did. If it didn't, well, then whatever. But if it did, big thumbs up please for me. Subscribe if you haven't. Always going to be doing these videos. Going to be definitely doing more of these coming up. So again, thanks guys. I appreciate it. Get your macros right. Go lift. Take selfies. Do what you got to do. Whatever. Show the world your progress. If you follow me on Instagram, it's jhawk_fitness. Comment on my pictures. Let me know you've seen these videos. I always see those guys. I appreciate it. I don't always respond just because I haven't had the time, but I'm going to get better at that, I promise. Have a good day. Go lift. Happy Monday.